Hey, I'm back and I missed you guys too. But hey, let's catch up at the end of the video. For now, I got this. A camera with an APS-C body, but with a full frame sensor inside. This is a dream come true. Hey, what's going on? It's Jason Vong, in case you forgot about that. And this is the newly announced Sony a7C. C stands for compact. And in this video, we're gonna break down this camera. Who's it for? Why does it exist? And of course, addressing a few elephants in the room. Mainly, how come this camera doesn't have 4K 120? So first off, I want to apologize. I don't have a lot of great photo samples from this particular camera just because California has a lot of wildfire going on right now, so it's been difficult to go out to shoot with such a bad air quality. But this won't be the first and last video of this camera. I will have more videos coming out on the Sony a7C, so stick around, subscribe, stay tuned for more, including better photo samples. I won't be spelling out every single specs of this camera. You can pause the video for that. I will be vocal on some of the more important features, but it's gonna be largely similar to the award-winning Sony a7 III. In fact, the worst analogy I can give you guys is think of Nintendo having the Switch console and the Switch Lite console, the latter coming out a few years after the original, but it can still play all of the Switch games, but the key difference is that it's much smaller and lighter, but it's also missing some of the more important bells and whistles that makes the original shine. This quote-unquote a7 III Lite performs like the a7 III. Really, there's nothing for me to comment about the performance. It's really good. But compared to the a7 III, it's missing a lot of the customizable buttons. These are really handy for speeding up your workflow while you shoot, especially when you need to change settings on the fly. And of course, the a7C does not have the extra SD card slot for redundant recording. Now, this is completely understandable. Sony is going for a much different demographic, not so much the pro user market. Mainly two different groups. One is for APS-C users who've been wanting to go full frame for a while, and two, the video enthusiasts and vloggers out there. So the first group, it's obvious, is designed to give that extra push for APS-C users who've been wanting to go full frame but wouldn't because they still value the discreetness and the portability aspects of the a6000 series more. Pause. Let's be real here as well. The cost of moving on to full frame is a huge barrier as well, but we'll talk more about pricing later. With the a7C now, when you hold it in your hands, it will feel familiar. A little chunkier than the original a6000, but relatively the same as holding an a6600, simply because it's also using the bigger FZ100 battery. You'll be of course getting more photo and video mileage at the cost of having a bigger grip, but it's okay. It's not a bad thing at all. The second group, Sony is going for the video enthusiast crowd. Not quite pro, but serious enough to value video quality, right? These are your social media video content creators. Now, all vloggers are social media content creators, but not all social media video content creators are vloggers, if that makes any sense. And how Sony's targeting them is simply this right here, a flip out screen. Everyone loves and trusts the face and eye autofocus in the Sony cameras, but the fact that they can see themselves now while they vlog, or even just to get the trickier angles, the a7C here is a lot more appealing. I mean, yeah, it took them a while to finally implement the flip out screen, but this is gonna be a thing moving forward with any future Sony cameras. Now, let's be clear here. I'm not saying the a7C is not pro. If we compare it to the a7 III, the only compromise, again, is the extra buttons, the one card slot, and maybe the lack of joystick to change the focus points. However, we still have all the great benefits of the a7 III in the light form. 4K up to 30 frames per second, 1080p up to 120 frames per second, in-body image stabilization, all of the picture profiles, including S-Log 3 and Hybrid Log Gamma, eye autofocus in both photo and video mode, and animal eye autofocus in photo mode, amazing battery life, and no recording limit. In fact, if anything, the a7C has advantages over the a7 III. Again, mainly that flip out screen. It also has slightly better autofocusing since it does use the new touch tracking autofocus like the A9 and the A6400. The A7C is also rocking the new multi-interface hot shoe technology, so you can use the digital signal of the ECM B1M Sony cordless microphone. You can't do that with the A7 III. You can still use the analog signal, but you can't use the digital signal because the mic was developed after the A7 III launched. And the A7C has the new autofocus sensitivity and transition settings for finer focus control. Which is kind of funny because these new autofocus settings were introduced in the Sony a7S III. Do you hear that? Sounds like there are elephants in the room. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the big question marks that a lot of us have. You see, the A7S III that was announced a couple of months ago introduced a brand new, friendlier menu system, and of course, the epic 4K up to 120 frames per second with up to 10-bit 422 recording. Like, wow, I'm still processing that right now. I'm not saying I expected 4K 120 in the A7C, let alone 10-bit 422 recording. I wouldn't expect that, right? But at least 4K 60, I think that's truly a miss on Sony's end. No new menu system, I can forgive them on that, right? I mean, truth be told, I'm still getting used to the new menu system on the Sony a7S III. It's kind of a huge learning curve for me. Not that it's a bad thing, it's a welcome change. Everything is more organized and better categorized. But since I'm already so used to the older Sony menu and all of the previous Sony cameras, getting the A7C up and running only took minutes. Now, I'm not trying to defend Sony in any way, but I do want to offer some perspective as to why I think the A7C is lacking some of these new features. Sony is a big company with multiple departments, multiple divisions, whatever have you, right? They don't just make alpha cameras. They make PlayStations, televisions, and soundbars. But as consumers, we tend to forget that. It's not really on the forefront of our minds to kind of remember that companies have multiple divisions and subdivisions, and within those subdivisions, there are multiple teams working on various different types of projects. So likely the A7C and the A7S III were being developed at the same time, but you do have one team who's so focused on making the best video mirrorless camera they can possibly could, a la the A7S III team. And then you also have the other team whose sole focus is to turn the A7 III into the world's smallest and lightest full-frame camera. Likely, both of these cameras were completed at the same time, so Sony was at a crossroad as to which one they should announce first. Now, it would make more sense if they announced the A7C first, just because, you know, the A7S III is going to be bringing in a lot of new stuff that people will be expecting. But at the same time, I feel like the more passionate camera enthusiasts would not like that, you know? They've been waiting for the A7S III for a very long time now, like at least 3-4 years. So had they had to wait for another announcement to go through this announcement before the A7S III, I think they would be very upset. So there really is no winning, in my opinion. I think what they did was the right move to sort of announce the A7S III first, you know, that way, hey, there's that camera you want, so here, keep those folks happy. And then you have this camera here that may not really shine through as much. It's missing a few things, but it can be overlooked for the most part. But damn, at least 4K 60. If this camera had 4K 60, that would have been nice. But, you know, that's something that we might see in the A7 IV, and then maybe after a few years later, we'll get an A7 IV Lite, aka the A7C Mark II with that 4K 60 recording ability, or actually even more, 4K 120 at that point. Now, obviously, I'm not saying to wait until they come out with that camera. We're still quite a bit of ways away. So if the A7C right now fits all of the criteria that you're looking for in a mirrorless camera, and you have the budget for it right now, then the pre-order link is in the description box below. Anyways, I just want to say my dreams came true. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not my dream camera, but my dreams did come true. Over the years, in all the live shows that I do with Danny, I've always mentioned that if Sony could just go back to the smaller full frame bodies, harkening back to the A7 I, A7 II, A7R2 days, just give me back a smaller grip. I don't care if you have to use a smaller battery. I don't care about dual SD card slots. Just give me back a smaller form factor, but soup it up with the current technology, all the great autofocusing, the 4K and whatnots, and I would be all over it. This right here, this isn't exactly what I meant, but it's exactly what I wanted. I love the A7 III and I love the A7R Mark IV. These are the cameras that I used to make a living with. I do a lot of paid gigs with them. But at heart, I personally love shooting photos and I love shooting videos. I bring a camera wherever I go. If it's not for work, it's for, my own thing. So ratio-wise, yeah, I use these cameras professionally extensively, but if I were to measure out ratio-wise, I actually use my cameras a lot more casually. Like when I vacation travel, these are the same cameras that I bring with me. These are the same cameras I work with, I bring with me on vacation. However, when I'm on vacation, that's when I wish these cameras were a little bit smaller. Back in 2016, even though I had both a full frame and an APS-C body, the A7R2 and the A6500, I would almost always exclusively go for the A6500, most often just because of its size. But when I shoot with it, especially for photos, I would always wish that I had a full frame on me. So the A7C is sort of a middle ground for someone like me. Okay, so we didn't get a chance to talk about the new lens yet, but I think I'm gonna have to save that for another time. I will be experimenting with weekly topical videos just because there is still so much more to talk about the A7C, and I think what's important right now is just sort of introducing the camera to everyone. And also I didn't want to make this video too long, so expect maybe in about a week or two for me to have more information about the A7C. In the meantime, let's quickly wrap this up. So price, $1,800 US. It will be available late October 2020, and pre-order should be up the day after this video is uploaded, so if it is, I'll have a link down below. $1,800 is still a hefty price tag. In this video, yes, we said this camera is meant to help shift some of the APS-C users over to full frame, and they will. But obviously not everyone's gonna start officially shooting full frame the moment that this camera comes out. Again, this is more for anybody who's been very serious about the photography and videography hobby, who's been shooting with APS-C for at least a few years now, who's been meaning to move on to full frame but quite haven't yet. They will likely have the budget to consider this camera, either fully going onto the A7 III or whatever the next one is, or opting to go with the A7C just because it retains that same form factor that they like. But newcomers though, they're not gonna consider full frame, okay? They're gonna go for whatever is the more affordable option. So something like the A6000, which is a quarter cost of the A7C, and even the the A6100 is worth considering because it is less than half the cost of this brand new camera here. So there will still be at least another few years that people are still buying the APS-C cameras, but as time goes on, as the price drops for the A7C, I think that's when that transition will slowly happen and more people will be acclimated to shooting with a full frame camera. But looking at the price as someone who's been so warped with pricing for camera gear, someone who's been in the game for a while now, $1,800 is not a bad price for what you're getting. Yes, you can get the A7 III now for the same price or even much lower if you know where to look. However, for the size and for the minor upgrades on the A7C, it's not bad. It's actually really worth considering. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of the Sony a7C. Is this the smaller full frame camera that you're looking for, especially if you are an APS-C shooter right now? Or are you just waiting for the Sony a7 IV and don't mind it being the standard full frame look? Quick channel/personal update for my MVPs. That's supposed to be V, MVP. The V stands for, we're supposed to be for Vong. I don't know. Anyways, I just want to say thank you to everyone who've watch that last video all the way through. To be quite honest with you, I didn't read any of the comments until a few weeks after I uploaded that video, just because I was scared to death. It was very embarrassing. I don't think I've ever been that vulnerable in front of a camera before, but to my surprise, a lot of you guys left very supportive comments. I even got emails from some of you guys. If you sent an email, yes, I've read them. And it means a lot to me. A lot of you guys shared your perspective on the similar burnout that you went through and sort of the steps you guys took to reshift the important priorities back to the top in your life. And it's been really helping me tackle the issues that I'm going through. I'm not 100% better yet. There's still so much more that I personally need to work on. And quite a few of you pointed out that a month break is not enough time, and you are 100% absolutely correct. It's been 2 months and it's still not enough. But I just want to update you guys that I am doing a lot better. I am feeling lighter, I'm feeling happier, I'm in a much better headspace. Though I still stress about work and I still stress about YouTube, but I'm doing my best to create boundaries between work and personal time, and I've been making the best effort that I can to make time for the people that truly matter in my life. With that said, I still gotta make YouTube videos just because this is my only source of income now, thanks to COVID still running rampant. So I can't shoot weddings this year and I can't shoot for clients this year. But I will be approaching this channel a lot differently. Not just when I will create content, but also how I create them. So moving forward, I will be experimenting a lot on this channel, and I will be relying on you. Yeah, you who's watching all the way through this video right now. I'll be relying on you for feedback. So please, 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 be brutally honest. Give me some constructive feedbacks as to how you feel about the direction of this channel shifting over time. Obviously, you know, it's gonna take a little bit before you can kind of really see the pattern and the trend that I'm going for, but you know, don't hesitate, let me know in the comments down below. I'm thinking to do a little bit more of these end video dialogues between us, so you guys get a little bit of an update with what's going on. But yeah, but talk to me in the comments. I love hearing from my MVPs. That is still so weird to do. Maybe I'll just not do that again. But yeah, until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.